A pleasure to me all at last, and here we are at it again with more films I should have talked about years ago. So for this season, what we're going to do is go back much further. And it's probably the furthest back that I've gone so far, even more than when I talked a bit about Blackula, the more African-Americanized version of Dracula. That came out in 1972. But I'm finally getting around to Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah, that's right. This, of course, was the famous 1962 adaptation of the Pulitzer Prize-winning book by Harper Lee of the same name, To Kill a Mockingbird. This, of course, follows the likes of Atticus Finch, a man whom unfortunately was widowed since his wife had died, and he was, of course, a well-known lawyer in the town of Macomb, Alabama. He, of course, has two children, Jem and Scout. These two are, of course, children who do have themselves some pretty distinct accents to them, but overall have a bit of a somewhat quiet and possibly boring life to them. But that probably was the beauty of things back in the day. The kind of ease that people would have had here, as opposed to simplicity, in which that things would occasionally get complicated back then, but back then just wasn't that good of a time to be a part in. And there's a number of reasons that I could go into this, but I don't need to get off track of it. The thing is the likes of Scout and Jem mostly have a life of being with their father, Atticus, at their home in Macomb, and they also had themselves Robert Duvall's own performance as a next-door neighbor. Probably the biggest thing to note about all this is that apart from the unique things the book tells us and what the movie tells us, is the trial that ensues. Because, unfortunately, because this was the 1930s, not just with the book or the film, the setting does involve a number of different problems that were wrong with society. And this is probably one of the biggest things about how life back then just totally sucked. You know? And all those people want to start thinking that life today sucks. Well, let me take you back to a point in history when times were really horrifying. And I got a lot of history and a lot of evidence stored in my brain, as well as a lot of people I knew over the years, many of which unfortunately aren't around anymore, but they're more than just good witnesses at what happened back then. So anyways though, the trial centers around a man who was supposedly being accused of rape. Yeah, you pretty much heard that right. The likes of Tom Robinson, an African American who was also in the state of Alabama, he was basically being condemned by society for supposed rape accusations that had occurred, and the trial itself would take place in Macomb's own courthouse, upon which that Atticus would be there to defend against the many perpetrators that were out there. And this, of course, becomes the big point in history in which that is made for where Scout and Jem Finch, the two children of the highly acclaimed lawyer himself, Atticus Finch, are subjected to a number of different problems with the United States. Because while their lives were seemingly simple, as most of the time it was a lot of quiet time and a lot of things to reflect on and a lot of things that they could do along with their friends, the thing is, when all this courthouse stuff is going on and a lot of courthouse related drama has come and gone, as the movie mostly centers on this sort of stuff, the case itself that's centered around Robinson himself, whom is played by Brock Peters, by the way, it's all in a matter of storytelling for the likes of both Jem and Scout. The reality of Alabama and the United States as it currently stood by this point. Because in spite of their young age, they seemingly have full understanding of what was going on out there. A man was being accused of rape, yet his skin color was different. This basically pervades to a known topic that some people still talk about today: racism. And it's no doubt that racism is none of anybody's ignorance. Yeah. This was definitely a time in which all those people are telling us that they want to go back to those times, those simpler times. Like, that actually is possible, first of all. And even if so, think about it. The time in which that we're in now, not a single person who's of dark skin color shall ever be abused, made fun of, or laid out to die. All right? There's not a single person out there that would be stupid enough to put somebody up in trial falsifying rape accusations of any sorts. And this film, along with the book itself, truly gave us the purpose. The purpose of which that we are not the kind of people to ever be put in these sort of innocent personnel in courthouses, accusing them of anything at all, let alone serious crimes like rape and murder. Like, wow, what a way to go there, society. But by any means, the 1930s was a point in time in which that most people were naive enough to think that that stuff would never happen. But then again, 70 years later, what else happens? Another thing that people were rather naive about. And what do y'all New Yorkers have to say about that? But on top of all the things out there that I've had to say about all this, the movie itself is rather simple in terms of its setup. You got a few outdoor scenes here and there, some scenes inside the house, and a lot of things to do with the court. Because that's mostly what the story centers on about. I mean, children may be subjected to a number of things, but a man who's being put up for trial on rape and other things, that's definitely something that's more of an eye-opener for anybody, especially minors. So either way you look at it, this was definitely a film that was more eye-opening to me, more so than a lot of others. Could be because many people are living more carefree rather than careful, which, as we know, may cause history to be repeated every now and then. Still, I feel like that with a film like this, it's more than worth the watch here. Because Gregory Peck, alongside many of the other members of the cast, were able to put on such a unique star-studded performance. Now, much like how the book had gotten itself some Pulitzer Prizes, this film was actually entered for some awards. And while I can't say much about what it didn't win because I hadn't looked nothing up about it, I will at least say it definitely is at least awarding in a different way. It's awarding based on the kind of storytelling that truly exploits the kind of weakness that society truly has. The need to accuse somebody of committing a serious felony when really they had no real evidence about it and no real judgment call to make of it. It truly does bring about the kind of wonders that what could people possibly be thinking about putting themselves in such a big situation like that, in which that they put out some name out there for the police to find, and eventually the judge to find, and the jury to find, and the lawyer and 2 children of his to find as well. Who would possibly do that? Here in 25, going on 26, we are basically moving on from so many horrible things that happen in society that nobody could dare possibly bring back. And even if somebody once does, the damage will probably be much less than how it was back then. Not only because people have learned the kind of errors that were made at the time, but they also will learn the kind of errors that people would try to make again, assuming if they wanted to do this again. Either way, this was one crazy story that had come around, and many, many years later, society has truly learned how to treat people right. Entire cities are pretty much run by African Americans by this point now. And probably for the best. That the big cities truly have what they need in life. Not only respect, but admiration. Those communities just need a little bit more love. End of story. So for that reason, I will go ahead and give To Kill a Mockingbird a solid 7.0 out of 10.1. Still not exactly that much more for me to talk about here because, again, from the way that it's set up in a more simple plot point pattern, the storyline centers around a number of different locations and a small amount of different characters, but with a good amount of dialogue and a good amount of things to look around and listen to, especially from the voice of Gregory Peck himself. I find this movie more than worth watching, probably multiple times if you have to. And with that in mind, thank you guys for watching yet another piece of films I should have talked about years ago. I'll be back with more stuff here, and I'm sure that as the days go on, we're going to be expecting more colder weather. So perhaps do expect me to be in some more warmer clothing here because I might be using this room for a good amount of time. And perhaps if I'm able to take down my Christmas decorations and things like that, I might go ahead and head back to my original spot. So, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.